I could start us by asking how many times package index has crashed this week.
Oh, it's never crashed though. That's the problem.
Well, this is your answer. This is your answer. This is the show. This is the show.
Well, here we are. It didn't actually crash. It did not crash. The problem was it should have crashed. That would have been actually easier. The problem is it hung.
So yeah, we've been having a extremely long-standing problem with the package index that Sven has been incredibly diligent in constantly restarting the servers every time they go down. But as you say, it's a hang, not a crash.
Yes, and that wasn't even clear. So initially I thought it was perhaps related to a crash because there were some stack traces, and well, not stack traces, but dumps, seg faults in the, or signal 11s in the logs, and it was really unclear what the cause for the hang was. So the only symptom we had, like the service wasn't working anymore, and this wasn't the website. This was one of our batch jobs. So it's not terrible for the site. It just means that our updates sort of start lagging because one part isn't running anymore. And it wasn't really, so the only symptom was in the logs, there was just a final message, this is sort of, that's the last thing the thing did, and then nothing else. And it was unclear what's going on. There was CPU being used, so something was churning, but nothing happening. And this started happening when we converted over from event loop futures to async await. So I think we started this almost 2 years ago. I think in winter 21-22 is when we first started this, right? That's when async await came out in 5.7, right? 5.6?
I think it was 5.6.
It might have been 5.6, yeah. It's 2 versions per year.
I may be wrong though.
Yeah. And initially it was fairly infrequent. And I think if, in hindsight, I think it happened more and more frequently because we converted more and more stuff to async await.
Right.
But that's really a guess because we don't really know yet. We just have a fix now finally. And like huge thanks in particular to Gwyn Raskin here, because she was really, really helpful in tracking this down. And essentially the fix was to remove one of our task groups, async await task groups that we'll be using to kick off our processing. Part of the processing we were doing there was running shell jobs that do Git operations. And very early on, she suspected that's the problem, but we we always wanted to actually find out what the problem was. So we delayed making that change also because we were sort of hesitant to make it because, because the fix was actually take out that task group and make those batches not run concurrently anymore. So there was a bit of a concern that we lose performance. We were running things in parallel. That gave us some advantage because often things were waiting on network while others were running Git jobs and doing database updates. So there was sort of a good use for concurrency because different parts of the system are used separately, and do you want to utilize all of it as much as you can, and making that just single threaded was sort of a concern. But in the end, we probably lost way more time when this job was down and waiting for me to notice or respond to the alerts that we had and restart it. And, it's one of those things also, it didn't happen immediately. So any change we made, we sort of thought, well, is that it? And then we waited for hours, sometimes days, because you could never know. Typically it would happen a couple of times a week. In the end, it happened multiple times a day. There was actually an improvement in the sense that we had a faster turnaround in trying to debug it. Because initially any change we'd made would effectively, let's meet again next week and see how we did.
These bugs that don't occur regularly are a real pain because you try something, you don't really know whether it's going to work or not, and then you have to wait 24 to 48 hours for it to get the news. And for the first 12 hours, you might be filled with hope.
Yeah, exactly. You think, all right, there were a couple of times where I text her, it's looking good, and then, oh no, just
But it really was. Towards the end, it was happening multiple times a day, which is not a great situation, because it did, like you say, it didn't affect the uptime of the website, but it did affect our processing of new package versions and that kind of stuff. So it was not critical in that people could still access the website, but it was an important bug, and it's just been, I mean, it must be, well, it's like you say, it's since the introduction of async await, which is a couple of years, isn't it? So
yeah, it's been really long. And again, I mean, if this had been like this multiple times a day, I mean, we'd probably fixed it sooner or found out ways to address it sooner. The fact that it was just initially a couple of times a month is something you just effectively ignore, right? If a service hangs twice a month,
yes,
you just restart it, right? It's not great, but it's also not terrible. It's, especially in hindsight, how much time we sunk into fixing this up. If I had to make that choice again twice a month or trying to figure this out, I mean, twice a month I'll take that. That was easier.
That's the blessing of async await being adoptable slowly, in that we could, we did start to introduce it and replace it, first of all in new code, and then started to replace bits as we touched a bit of code. You might convert it from event loops to async await, but of course the more we did that, the more it seemed to get this problem got worse, right?
Yes, yeah, and I wouldn't make that trade either. I mean, I'm happy we made that change to async await. It just makes,
of course,
maintaining the code much nicer.
We should be very clear here and say that we're not saying that task groups are bad.
No.
I think this is, I know we haven't logged a bug for this yet, because I think getting a reproducible case for this is going to be, I don't know, tricky.
Yes, so I was going to get to that. We haven't reported that really, because it's effectively, I wouldn't even know how to report that. A task group on Linux in certain situations can cause hangs. I mean, if I got that bug report, I say, well, tell me more. And then I say, well, I can't really. So one of the things we tried to debug this was when the process hangs to send it a kill signal to get a stack trace. But the problem is with 590 right now, on Linux, you don't get symbolicated stack traces. There's a change that fixes that it's going to go live with 591, I believe. And once that is live, I guess what we'll do is revert back to the task group, at least on dev, because it happened on both environments, and then just run it and see if we can get a stack trace out of it, then to get more info on have at least something better to report than this nebulous hangs sometimes sort of report, because no one can do anything with that really, because Gwyn is super experienced with this sort of stuff, and was actually trying to read the stack trace that we got, the raw one, and sort of had some ideas, but I think we need more information for anyone else to be able to do more here.
So even though it's fixed, it's not over.
It's not over, no, but well, at least in terms of operationally it's over. That's great. The performance hit wasn't actually as bad as I thought it'd be. I think it's 50 or 60%, something like that, which is okay. We have a little headroom there. We're not running the process back to back all the time. We have a little pause there because analysis is running fast enough for our purposes. So if we were uncomfortable with sort of this running a bit slower, we could reduce the delay and have the same throughput effectively. So that's not terrible either. So I think we're all right there overall.
It's also worth probably mentioning that the only thing this would delay is how quickly packages update after a new version is published. So we're currently running at like a couple of hours, something like that. So if depending on how far through the cycle we are, you might get lucky and it might update almost immediately if your package was next in the update queue. But in worst case scenario, you're looking at a couple of hours of delay from pushing a new release to GitHub and the package page updating. So even if that doubled, I wouldn't be fretting too much.
Yeah.
Like I would love it if every package immediately updated. Of course I would. That would be the best situation. But this is not something that really is going to affect most people. And this is only versions. This like the packages are all still there. So people searching for packages using the package index, they're gonna. It's relatively minor in the grand scheme of things.
Yes, and we do prioritize new packages for immediate analysis. So if you add a package, it'll be
of course
going to the front of the queue. So this only affects if you have releases, and effectively means that going through all packages once now takes probably around 6 hours. I haven't actually measured it. It used to take 4. We also have more packages these days. So
my numbers are out of date then.
Yeah, I haven't actually checked, but we have early on we had 3,000. I think it's 6,000 now. So I have doubled the packages and 50% slower processing. I would bet we've gone from 3 to 4 to maybe 6 hours or something like that. But it shouldn't be a huge problem.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's fixed.
Oh yeah, so am I. And pretty much in parallel to this, there was another problem that we started having recently, which interestingly was also a hang, but unrelated to this one. That was affecting our build system. Also there, it's unclear why that happened. It only affected Xcode builds, like with the Xcode build command builds. So on Apple platforms, we have 2 ways of running builds. One is SwiftPM, and the other one is Xcode build, especially for the iOS, tvOS, watchOS, visionOS platforms.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if it was all packages, but many packages, when they had a build failure, they would hang. And to the best of our understanding, this is a OS update potentially that caused that, because we had no related build changes that would cause that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's also something we fixed, sort of inherited another fix that helped out in this case as well. So it was a big week or 2 weeks since we last recorded.
Yeah. And this was actually causing us capacity issues with the build system, because the builds that were hanging were then holding up other builds in the queue, and we got into a situation where our build system was unable to keep up with the influx of new releases and versions, that's the first time that's happened, really. And of course, with our current hardware, that was going to happen at some point, because the number of packages and the number of releases keeps increasing. Yes, it was a little bit of a panic stations where when the queue of pending builds was only going up and not really coming down very much.
Yeah.
And I should mention that Mac Stadium helped us out with, before we figured out the bug, just to help us keep that backlog under control, they very, very kindly temporarily gave us an extra machine so that we could keep on top of the backlog.
Yeah, that was great. That helped so much, because if you sort of have to fix something and at the same time keep an eye on a queue that's filling up, it's just not great. So having that sort of relief, at least it's working again, because also now the build system is doing the documentation building, so it's kind of getting additional responsibility, and also people are relying on that more. If we look at our stats in documentation, page views, that's going up. So people are relying on the docs more and more, and having issues in the build system that also affect the documentation generation isn't great. So
yeah,
that's really, I'm really glad that those 2 issues are fixed, and sort of frees us up again.
And again, just to be super, super clear, none of this affects the hosting of that documentation. It's all only about how quickly that documentation and the package pages get updated after a new release.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, a couple of weeks of bugs.
Yeah.
Talking of the build system, I noticed a package get added to the index this week, which I think we've talked about Windows compatibility before, but the package is Swift WinRT by Salim Abdul Rasul, and this is a package that allows you to hook into the Windows runtime APIs on Windows, of course, from Swift. And the reason that I bring this up with the build system is this is obviously a very interesting package. It enables it enables native Windows development with Swift, which is quite a thing. That is a major step forward in terms of cross-platform Swift, and that is not to say that it's allowing Apple technologies like SwiftUI and UIKit to run on Windows. That's not what this is. This is, if you want to build a native Windows application with Swift, this package will help you do that. But the downside is, if you look at the compatibility matrix for that package, it is full of grey crosses, which means that there's nothing compatible. And the reason for that is that we don't have Windows compatibility testing yet. And the more that happens on Windows, the more urgent this problem of, do we tackle compatibility testing for Windows, the more important that becomes.
Yeah, it's going to happen at some point, right? I'm just peeking through the gap between my two screens here, and I see my old Intel MacBook, and I think it's going to see new life as perhaps a Windows test machine.
Yes. Well, we could run the test machines.
No, just to try it, right? I've never run or done anything with Swift on Windows. I mean, it's just macOS and Linux.
Neither have I. Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of Windows experience either. I stopped using Windows in 91 in earnest. So I shy away a bit from it, to be honest. Even installing it and getting into it, I know we're going to have to at some point, but it's so out of my comfort zone that I sort of I'm currently trying to find other things to do.
Yeah, I mean, we could run the servers, no problem. The rest of our infrastructure, the build machines that do not run on Mac Stadium, they run on Microsoft Azure. So if there's one place you can run Windows machines reliably, it's Azure. So that's not a problem. The issue is building that, taking advantage of Windows, or not even taking advantage, just getting it working with Windows is going to be the issue. But we have to tackle it. We have to.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Also integrating it into our build system, which is even between Mac and Linux, there are huge differences in how we operate those. And Windows will have yet another way.
Yes.
Potentially of how to do that. I suppose. I mean, it kind of depends on how that works. I guess, it's only SwiftPM build, so I guess, and probably not Dockerize. Well, I'm pretty sure it's not Dockerized, so it'll probably mirror how we do the macOS builds, but it's going to take some figuring out how to do that, how to run the machinery we need to schedule the builds and all that stuff on Windows and all that. So it's going to take some typing.
It's also, and this is clearly the biggest issue of all, is it's also going to need a redesign of that compatibility matrix, because we're absolutely squished right to the very edge of what fits on that matrix right now. So clearly that's the biggest issue of them all, the design of it.
We should probably start there, and I'll wait.
Yes, but it certainly it would be lovely to see a green tick there.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. In terms of, that wasn't a real package pick now, was it? That was still.
It wasn't. That was just talking about packages. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm sort of in a similar situation, because I have a package pick that came out of another thing that I saw on Mastodon, and that is perhaps something we could briefly talk about. And it's a dev tool, Breadcrumbs by Martin Todorov. He's doing these great little experiments with dev tools. I mean, he's also released some dev tools in the past, but currently he's sort of using SwiftUI to prototype stuff, and it's really great to follow along what he's doing. And that kind of made me think, Dave, when's the last time you came across a new macOS dev tool that really embraced the platform? Can you recall something really new?
Yeah, you asked me this question before. There's a bit of background to this. You asked me this question before the show, and the only one I could come up with was Reveal, which is definitely not new, but it has just had a new release. And that is, for all intents and purposes, as far as we know, a successful developer tool. It shouldn't be a difficult market, because the people who Marin already knows should be his target audience for these tools. And there should be an audience, a ready-made market for developers to make developer tools that make viable, or doesn't have to be a complete viable business, but certainly support the development of the tool. And I don't really know why that's not possible, but I agree it's not really happening. The other one that that springs to mind is Kaleidoscope, which is again not new, but has recently changed hands again and is receiving significant kind of development updates regularly. Almost every few weeks they put out a new version with some new feature, which honestly, it's a fantastic tool. It's a really great diff tool if you haven't checked it out. And that the pricing of that is certainly, it's subscription pricing, so it should be sustainable. It should be enough to build a business on the back of, but it is a tough market to get into at the moment.
And that's a perfect example, because I have that in my notes. Kaleidoscope, I use it effectively every day. I am on Kaleidoscope 3 because I've looked at the feature list of 4, the one that changed to subscription pricing, and I sort of struggle to see the value proposition a bit. In my particular case, I don't even know, I don't remember what the differences were, but when I looked at it, I thought, yeah, I think, what would make me switch is, if an OS update sort of made 3 not work anymore. And I understand that is actually a feature that you need to pay for, maintenance of a tool that, changes across OS versions. And I'm happy to do that at some point. It's just that right now, I didn't make the switch yet. And I think a lot of that is because our expectations around pricing have changed so much with effectively the pricing development on the App Store, right? We've sort of been trained to expect lower and lower prices. If I told my past self, like 10, 20 years ago, there's a dev tool that costs €100 per year, yeah, that's normal business. But it's not anymore. It's like it really stands out as a price. Yeah. And it shouldn't, and it's really hard, even if you are thinking about this, you are affected by these low prices because that's what you compare it to. And it's really bizarre. And at the same time, we lament this decline in tools. Last thing I could think of that I bought was Nova, which also isn't new, right? They're on version 4 something, I believe, but I only just started using it recently. We lament the absence of these tools. At the same time, we are all sort of affected by the low prices and sort of don't then chip in when there are tools that are certainly worth it. It's a really bizarre situation, and clearly, I think if the market was better, some of these experiments, that Marin is making would probably turn into proper products. But I don't know, but I think the main reason he isn't wrapping them up and publishing them because. And I know he tried it with a couple of things in the past, is that they don't tend to be sustainable in the end. I know from my little app that I have, which isn't effectively a dev tool, but a window management tool, that's nowhere near something that would sustain any sort of indie career. It's
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. I have a dev tool as well on the App Store, an Xcode plugin. It's nothing. There's just nothing happening. And I don't do any marketing, so there's no surprise. But it's also not. This isn't happening on its own. So there's clearly something off.
I think this also comes into the whole subscription pricing thing. Like you just said it then, that if somebody said to you, this tool that you use and rely on is going to be £100 per year, and you say, well, that's a decision I can make, yes or no, on that, and it's the old way of doing it would be that you pay the money and then a year later or something like that, you pay some more money for an upgrade to the latest version of it or whatever like that. That worked for many, many years. And there's actually very little difference between that model and the subscription model, apart from that you lose access to the running piece of software that you currently have with the subscription model. And in reality, that I don't think is a huge issue, but mentally that is an enormous blocker, because you feel like, well, I'm paying for this thing, and therefore, and I'm not saying this is the correct, there's no such thing as a correct opinion here, but there is something fundamental in us that says, well, I'm paying for this thing, therefore I should own this thing. And that switch to subscriptions is, in reality, is a very trivial switch for the actual amounts of money that change hands, but that there's something in our brains that doesn't like that switch.
Yes, and there's actually, I mean, if I just think about it rationally, there's a great argument for subscription pricing. Is I don't really love it when software sort of comes up with point releases to charge money,
right,
and features that really don't do anything, right? There's that happening as well. That's just feature creep for the purpose of being able to charge someone. I'd actually rather pay for just plain maintenance and picking features that make sense, rather than give it all sorts of bells and whistles that have no business of being there, other than, all right, I need to charge you something, so I need to ship something. And that's also a weird business model, right? It's but it's this subscription fatigue is real. If you have this feeling, right, I've signed up for this, and then everything hits me. I often sign up for stuff and then immediately cancel it, so I hate it when stuff renews and I forgot about it.
Yes, I do the same. I also set reminders in my calendar to say, cancel this a year. Let's say I pay for a year or something, and I put a reminder in saying, like, it's not necessarily cancel it, but just like make that decision. Did this pan out or not? And so my calendar, my reminders folder is full of those. Before we move on from this topic, I should just mention, for disclosure, I did receive a copy of Kaleidoscope 4 for free. I reviewed it for iOS Dev Weekly, so just to disclose that is the case, that I did receive a free copy of that.
Cool. Is it package time then?
I think it is. We were chatting before the show, saying we've not got much to talk about, and here we are, 32 minutes in already. So let's maybe keep it a short set of packages this week.
Let's do that. Do you want to kick us off?
Sure thing. I will kick us off with a package called Grape by Zenly. I actually linked to this in iOS Dev Weekly a couple of weeks ago. This is a visualization packages for connected nodes of information. You might have seen this quite often runs in JavaScript. In fact, I forget the name of it now, but there was a Swift an application written in Swift that inspected Swift dependencies and displayed them in this format of charts, and it's kind of like an animated node graph where there are a whole load of dots on the canvas, and then each dot is connected. So one dependency would be connected to another dependency, or whatever it is that you're modeling. And then they all have kind of a little bit of physics applied to them. So as they settle, the dots kind of push each other apart a little bit, and then you can interact with them, pull them apart, inspect them, click in, maybe navigate through to through a hierarchy of dependencies or something like that. Anyway, I'm sure if you have a look at the README file, you'll recognize immediately this style of visualization. But as I say, everything I've seen so far has been doing this in JavaScript, and in fact, even this Swift application that I mentioned before, that booted up, as far as I know, it booted up a web view and then visualized it within the web view. this is a Swift native implementation of that, and it looks great. This is the kind of thing that if you need this kind of display, then you should absolutely check this package out.
Great. That sounds great. Right, my first pick this week is called Firefly, and this is the package I alluded to earlier. It's a dependency that Maren Todorov is using in his little prototype Breadcrumbs. And so just to explain what Breadcrumbs actually does. Breadcrumbs is a little experiment, a Mac app that looks for to-do and fix-it or fix-me markers rather in Xcode projects. So you have a little viewer of those, and it shows the marker and some context around it, and you can click on that, and it brings up the file in Xcode. So you can, sort of traverse your project for to-dos and fix it, get a view of. You could effectively use them as little to-do items sprinkled throughout the code without actually needing to set up anything other than putting those markers in, which you probably have anyway. And that's a nice little tool. And in his main view, where he's showing the context around the to-do, like Swift code, that's syntax highlighted. And Firefly is the syntax highlighter that Maren is using in his project. And this is nice. I think we've mentioned syntax highlighting packages in the past, and they've all been based on, I believe, JavaScript libraries that was embedded in what's the framework? Do you know, is it JS Core is the framework, right? That's being used to absorb those. But this is a pure Swift package, so there's no fiddling with JavaScript wrappers or anything, that usual packaging of it. It's a pure Swift package, and you can just run the code through it, and you get a view, and you can display the highlighted, syntax highlighted text. So that's, I didn't actually say the author. That's Taylor Lineman is the author. Firefly by Taylor Lineman.
That sounds great, yeah. And just to also talk about that, the app that Maren was using it in, I think it's a great idea for an application. I'm not sure it supports subscription pricing, but it's a great idea. And I know that we have a whole load of to-dos in our code base that it would surface.
Well, the app is open source right now, so you can subscribe by. I'm not sure if Maren has a sponsor button on his GitHub, but if you are so inclined, and he does, that's a way to do that.
If he doesn't, he should have.
Yeah, he definitely should. He might. If he does, we'll add a link to the show notes, and then you can head over and support him.
I haven't yet tried his app, but I did see. I think I saw it actually in a Slack. He posted a screenshot of it somewhere as well.
Yeah.
My next package is pretty niche. It's by Leon Hopp, and it's called Swift ISO 8601 Duration Parser. So, for many years, before Foundation added an 8601 date parser, there was a very popular package for parsing these 8601 dates because it's a common format in many web APIs. In fact, I would say it is the default date format in most web APIs. But then Apple added to Foundation an ISO 8601 compatible formatter, and all our problems were solved. Until this week, I didn't realize that there was a new type, or not, it's not new at all, but a different type of ISO 8601 date-related formatting, and that is you can format durations in 8601 as well. So you could say, for example, PT12H is 12 hours, P3D is 3 days, P3DT12H is 3 days, 12 hours. And this is actually quite a useful format. I didn't even know this existed until I spotted this package the last week. Leon has put together a parser for it. In fact, Leon put together a parser for it 5 years ago. It's been in development for a long time. I just hadn't spotted it until now.
Nice, interesting. I did not know that was actually specified out. I mean, we've sort of you'd kind of think like 3D, W and stuff like that is sort of the common way. But you're saying, right, there's a P prefix to these that makes it sort of a more stable format. Did I get that right in your description?
Pretty much, yeah. Although also it's more than that, because it's because the 3 days 12 hours one is P3D, which is the P, whatever that means, and the 3D, but then there's a T 12 hours. So there's more to the format than just the letter P and then 3D 12H. I'm not sure that there is a link to Wikipedia. I haven't clicked it.
Interesting.
But, P is the duration designator for period. Okay, placed at the start of the duration representation. T is the time designator that precedes the time components in a representation.
Okay. Interesting. Nice.
Thank you, Wikipedia. There's another subscription. I subscribe to Wikipedia every year.
My second pick is a package called Automerge-Swift by Joe Heck. I actually thought we talked about this in the past, and we might have mentioned it, but I didn't find it in our previous show notes. So if we have... The reason I'm bringing it up again is that Joe has published a blog post announcing the latest release of the package. And what's new, I think, apart from it being, I think, more sort of on the road to feature complete, is that he has added an example app that actually uses the library. It's a little app to manage meeting notes. And the package is a library for CRDTs, which are conflict-free replicated data types. So this is a tool for building, or a library for building, collaborative systems where you can have data types that you can distribute. People can edit them independently, and then they can be merged. And there's the way that it's promised to be conflict-free, so you won't run into merge conflicts. Due to the magic of this library. I'm not sure if it's ruled out categorically by ways of how the algorithm works. I think it is. I'm not 100% sure. I've read quite a bit about them, but it's a big field. There's lots of different ways of implementing them. Automerge is one way of implementing them. And what's interesting here is there is actually an underlying library, Rust library, that powers this. And this is a Swift adaptation of it, or I think a wrapper around it. So it's a API layer that uses the Rust library, I believe. I didn't actually delve into it that deeply. And the interesting part is that because it's a Rust library and then also available for other platforms, it gives you a better chance of developing a system where Apple platforms or Swift platforms are just one part of what's using that as an exchange format. The Rust library would work on other platforms as well, and you could then exchange, the files and work with it across platforms, I guess, more easily than would normally be the case. So really nice, and I really like that there's an example app where you can play around with it and see how it works. And that's Automerge by Joe Heck.
I have Joe's blog post on this library in my reading list for this week. So thanks for the recap of that. I will still read it, but you saved me half the job.
There we go, Joe, coming up for this Friday, I guess.
But no, I know that this has been a topic that has been on Joe's mind for a long time now, and so it's great to see. And again, I am not an expert on the intricacies of CRDTs. I don't even know the acronym. I think it's CRDTs, right?
Yeah.
Or is it CDRTs?
No, CRDTs.
That's how little CRDTs. That's how little of an expert I am on them. But I also believe that they are potentially immune to conflicts. I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah. What I really want to happen is that someone takes the previous pick, Firefly, and this Automerge library and builds a Markdown collaborative editor. And I'm looking at you there, Maren. You're apparently experimenting with prototypes right now. Just Joe might help as well. You all go off.
Sub-ether edit. Do you remember Sub-ether?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So Sub-ether edit was part of the reason that I bought a Mac.
Yeah, many
I
people
was at
did.
a conference absolutely. I remember vividly. I was at a conference in San Diego. It was O'Reilly's eTech conference and this emerging technologies conference. And I walked into the conference hall on the first night. It was a strange layout to the conference, a strange schedule to the conference, that the keynotes were on the evening of the first day, and then the conference started properly the next morning. So I remember walking into this hall and seeing so many people taking notes with SubEtherEdit, because it used Bonjour to connect. And so if somebody was using SubEtherEdit in a room, you could automatically see the people around who were who were also editing, and everybody was editing their kind of joint conference notes on in this application. And at the time, I was a Windows user still, and before I left San Diego, I had gone into an Apple store and bought a Mac.
Nice. This is really part of what we were talking about earlier, right? These dev tools. I mean, would this happen today? I wonder, right? I don't recall SubEtherEdit. Was it always free? No, I think that was I don't remember.
It was paid.
It was paid. Yeah. Such great tools there were.
Yeah, and it was a great tool, and the richness of that app ecosystem on the Mac was absolutely the reason the platform was just flat out straight, without I say this without any hesitation, it was better. It was absolutely better. It's because of that native application ecosystem, and partly the fact that everything moved towards the web, and therefore Electron became a thing, and that's part of what happened. But I think it's more than that.
Yeah. Well, TextMate is the other thing, right? That was equally powerful in attracting people to the platform. I mean, I still have TextMate up right now. It's sort of my note-taking scratchpad, or config file editing thing.
So if you want the full story, it was a combination of SubEtherEdit and TextMate, because I was also experimenting with Ruby at the time, and Rails was like 0.5 version 0.5 or something like that at the time, and there was an amazing, very famous video that David Heinemeier Hansson made at the time, where he built some blog software with Rails using TextMate in like 5 minutes or something like that. And it was a great demo, really, really great demo. And TextMate was a big part of why it was a great demo, because it was the first editor I'd seen that had auto-expanding snippets. And I was already thinking about buying a Mac. It wasn't only SubEtherEdit. SubEtherEdit was the final straw, the last straw. But TextMate was there. TextMate was the initial kind of push towards it, and then SubEtherEdit broke the camel's back.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, they were great tools. Really great tools.
Yeah, really. Yeah. So in more before we get more stories of how we all got into this platform, let's wrap it up there, shall we? We will be back in a couple of weeks with some more news. Hopefully, no more bugs, and of course, some more package recommendations. So I will speak to you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. See you in 2 weeks. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.